Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to learn what static and final keywords do. Let's start with the final keyword. Final members are relevant only for interfaces and classes. When a function is specified to be final, that means it cannot be redefined by a subclass in the future. Its implementation is final, so if you try to override it, you will get an error. Now that we know what final does, let's focus on the static keyword. Static keyword has many use cases and it is applicable for structs, classes, and interfaces. Sometimes we need to share some pieces of information between all objects of a certain type. For instance, the number of enemies we have in our game at any moment. Whenever a new enemy is spawned, the number of enemies increases, and when the enemy dies, this number decreases. We could create a separate variable to keep track of the number of enemies, but it would be a lot better to put that variable inside a class or a struct and share it between all objects. Static variables can help us with this task, as they are created once and are shared between all objects. Let's create a few enemies, compile and run it to see the results. As it can be seen, the number of enemies has increased at first and then decreased when we left the main scope. The same variable was modified every time. Static variables can also be accessed directly by the class name, without creating any instances of that class. The same applies to static functions. And speaking of static functions, since no instance of a class is required to call such functions, as a result they cannot access non-static variables. Regular members are not available inside static functions. Static functions are very useful when you want to execute some piece of code that does not depend on the class data. For example, checking if two entities collide or not. In this case, all you need is the position and the size of the entities. And it could be an enemy, a player, a game obstacle, or anything else. Alright, that's it for today. See you next time.